All right, so bit of a grimdark therapy episode today, and this one's going to be a little bit different. For a start, we've got a guest who we'll talk about in a moment. But what I want to talk about today was I was reading Thomas Sowell. For those who don't know, he's an economist. He's getting up there in years. He's like 93 years old or something. Dude is still kicking, still publishing, still doing like seminars. So I don't get how he does that. I'm out of energy in my late 30s. But in any case, he had a book, Economic Facts and Fallacies. And it's very interesting because in that book, and obviously most of you are checking out by now when it comes to economic theory, but he talks about how certain incentives can create a flow on effect. A good example of an incentive for the right reason that has a bad consequence was in British India. There was a lot of people being killed by cobra bites. So what they did was they said, hey, we will pay a bounty for people who bring us snakes, and this will eliminate the snake problem. But rather than this incentive creating a situation where they got rid of the snakes, people started breeding them. They defanged them, and then they just bred tons and tons of snakes so they could go turn them in and get cash. See, the incentive was right. Yes, let's get rid of the snakes. We'll pay a bounty to get rid of all these cobras that are biting everyone. And unfortunately, people exploited that incentive in ways that they originally never thought of. So, with that in mind, that's going to lead into tonight's topic. But before we get to that, just want to introduce the guests for tonight. So, my co-hosts, as usual, we have Kaifa from over on What the 40K.
Hello.
And you got Northern Exile from, Northern Exile.
Hello. How's it going? Oh, my voice went. There we go. Good introduction.
And the mystery guest, Mordian, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on.
I say how are you, but actually before the show asked you how you were, and we decided that, if you complained, nobody would care, so you're happy.
I am happy, and I will do my best not to complain. That's the goal.
So, yeah, it's very easy to complain. I've decided in part of that new direction I'm trying to move the channel towards that I don't really want to just complain or be perceived as complaining. I want to just talk about what the situation is and let people draw their own conclusion from it. And with that in mind, the topic that I've come up with based on that incentives is this, and take me a second to lay it out, so I apologize to everyone in advance. So, your Games Workshop. You produce a game you call Warhammer 40,000. It's in its 7th edition of the game, and sales are suffering. Doesn't matter why, but they're suffering. And you've just released Age of Sigmar. And look, it's not too great, but out of all the complaints about that system, things like the stat lines and the way the special rules are all constructed and having it all baked in on a just roll a flat to hit and all that in the profile, nobody really is complaining about that, even though it's very different to the old world. So it doesn't matter if you've nuked the old world, people don't seem to mind the actual gameplay of the system if they get into it. So you decide you're going to make your new edition of 40k like that. And you have this massive pickup. You bring back these Primaris Marines that have these sort of, when I say bringing back, like the retro style, the Mark IV grills and this aesthetic to them. And your game does gangbusters. You now have an incentive there where you think, hey, if I release this game and I've given it this style of rule set, this is popular. Therefore, if I turn all of my games into this, I will make more money. What do you think of that as a topic?
I think it's good.
Yeah,
I think
it definitely seems to be the way they've gone about it.
Yeah, man, 100%.
Because I think that the simplification of the stat lines and the simplification of the game that occurred, the removal of certain units, I think that gave them the wrong incentive. They thought that it was successful because of those changes and not because it was just not 7th edition 40k with some cool new larger scale Marines. I think they took the wrong lesson away. And this has led to a situation, rightly or wrongly, so feel free to all jump in and pick me apart in a second, but where now all of their game systems are being flooded with what I'll call 40k migrants, who they're just not happy with the 40k system. Once an edition gets, say, 2 years old, they start leaving it. And they're just reaching out for any other game that Games Workshop creates just to try and find something that they like that's not current 40k. And they're trapped in the ecosystem. They still want to play Games Workshop. So they start going to 30k or to Age of Sigmar or to Lord of the Rings or whatever it might be. And then Games Workshop is sitting there and they look at it and they go, this is popular with 40k players. It might be more popular with 40k players if we add even more 40k mechanics.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's I think a lot of people at the end of an edition of 40k look for something that isn't 40k. And then the fact that Games Workshop's gone around and 40k-ified so many of their games it's just like the worst possible move they could do. At least in the short run. Maybe in the long run it'll be maybe they're thinking 5-10 years down the line. But yeah, I think let me tell you, from my personal perspective, as someone who was really excited to get into Horus Heresy, because at the end of about 3 months ago, I couldn't stop talking about Horus Heresy. I was like, it's like going back to old school Warhammer. It's proper old. It's proper the way things used to be, the glory days. And then 3.0 came out, and I was like, this isn't old Hammer anymore. Yeah, I'm not interested. I'm going to look for something else. So yeah, I think
47 comes on the horizon, and there you are.
And then Conflict. Can I turn this into a Conflict 47 episode? You give me an opportunity, I will do.
Well, do you think, in keeping with the theme of the episode, do you think that they are taking away the right inputs? Like they're taking away the right lessons over in, producing Conflict 47?
So I think Conflict 47, I think it puts Warhammer 40k and a lot of what Games Workshop does into a really interesting light, because it's it's successful, and obviously Warlord Games hasn't come out and said this, but Conflict 47 is flying off the shelves in a way that, I mean, it's, and let me be, not exaggerate, because obviously it's still a much smaller game, so flying off the shelves is a very relative term, but generally speaking, it's flying off the shelves in a way I don't think anybody expected. And the unofficial, and I know Warlord Games would never ever say this, but the unofficial I would say motto of Conflict 47 is like, what is 40k doing? Let's do the exact opposite to that. And, oh look, people really enjoy it. So yeah, I think there's an element of that. But I do want to stress, Conflict 47 is just a very good game in its own right. And even if Games Workshop turn the franchise around with 11th edition, it won't take away from the fact that Conflict 47 is just good. But there's definitely an element of, in a lot of the way the game is designed, a lot of the way the models are designed, a lot of the way the starter armies are put together. You can buy an entire starter army for the price of a Games Workshop Combat Patrol, basically, and the starter army is a full army. Like maybe it's a Combat Patrol and a half. You might get one extra box, but yeah, it almost looks like the way that Games Workshop chooses to do business is the very opposite way that Warlord Games with Conflict 47 are choosing to do business, and it's interesting to see how. Games Workshop is definitely taken away some lessons, and I would say the wrong incentives. We can get into like specifics, obviously, later. I don't want to be dominating the conversation too much, but I think, Warlord Games has definitely taken its lessons learned from watching what Games Workshop does, because you have to watch what Games Workshop does because they're the industry leader, and Games Workshop has taken their own lessons away from what they do, and they are almost the polar opposite.
Do we think that? Okay, because I don't want to attribute it to malice, in the past I've done that. I really don't want to attribute to malice I don't want to attribute it to incompetence. It's just I'm asking the question tonight, is it because they just have got the wrong idea? Like legitimately have the wrong idea. And then if someone does take away the right lesson, if they do turn around and try and say, like, well, hang on a minute, this thing's been successful in spite of these reasons, do they just get sort of shouted down because, like, they go, well, look, it can't be that 40K is bad because look at the sales numbers.
Well, it seems to me like there's another incentive as well, right? So I think what you're describing, this idea that 40K is successful, it has certain markers in its design. Let's replicate that on New Horus Heresy, for example. I think that certainly, it appears to be very true. But I think there's also this incentive where they must reinvent the wheel every edition. There needs to be a unique selling point, an error to fix, right? So if you must insert something new, I think you're probably gonna be adding those things you feel are good ideas. Speaking to the incentive you've laid out.
So it's funny because I feel like if we're coming up on 40 years since Rogue Trader. I wouldn't be surprised if they did like a 40th anniversary re-release of Rogue Trader, like just the rulebook, not miniatures or anything. But they've never done that sort of thing for 2nd, 3rd, or 4th edition 40K. Which is very interesting because I think 2nd has a very big following, because 2nd is really 40K as we know it. Everyone thinks of Rogue Trader because it was the genesis of Warhammer 40,000, but 2nd edition's where everything got codified, where all the lore was pretty much made, and it almost didn't change all the way from 1992 through to 2017 and 8th edition 40K. Like 2nd did all that, and then you got 3rd. Like 3rd, the simplified, cut down version of the game, so it's a little bit less in depth, but it allows you to field a much larger army, like the dichotomy of the two. And then, of course, going to 4th edition, you get all those wonderful 3.5 era codexes, which is just, to me, that was the golden age. Myself and some of my friends, we're going back to play 3.5 edition right now.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you wanted a guard, regiment, and I know this will be close to a couple of people's chests, you wanted to make a guard regiment, it was like, okay, pick what you're gonna have. You can have like Harakoni Warhawk style, or you can have all Kasrkin with the ability to deep strike. Like you can combine these different doctrines together. You can make some really, really just thematic stuff using the same core entry of units. And it's like that's gone now from 40K, and it doesn't feel like they want to revisit any of that, which to me is very interesting to see because it was such a rich narrative. We've never had more miniatures than we have now, but I feel like I've never had less choice than what I have now. And again, is the incentive there? Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's wild, man. That when it's wild that people still talk about the 3.5 codex. It's like the Chaos one and the Guard one, and also like it's sort of that 3.5 early 4th edition era. And like I was actually going back over the 4th edition codex for the Guard. Just doing a video on regimental doctrines because you've got a lot of new people that hear the old grognards in the corner grumbling about regimental doctrines, but they don't really know what it is. And I did this video, and it was really, for me, it was fascinating seeing, obviously, out of the woodwork, all the long beards being like, oh yeah, so it was better in my day, but also seeing all the new players in the comment section being like, oh my god, like this is crazy, like I can't believe this is how it used to be. This is so much fun. I'd love if we could do this kind of thing today. And it's crazy to me that it really feels like they've never beaten the 3.5 codexes. They've always they brought regimental doctrines back in one form or another, but they've never beaten the original. They've never quite managed to recapture that magic again.
Do we know what the incentive is there, that like, because they still try to do things like Codex Khorne, for example, right? Codex World Eaters. So it's like they do want to seem to bring back some of that flavor, but yet it doesn't quite land, I don't think. And like, so they've picked up obviously, as a company, they're smart enough to recognize that, okay, this is wanted by the community. Like, they want to be able to play Legions of Chaos, but then something goes wrong in the implementation, I feel. What?
I think most of this is people who aren't involved in the game making decisions of where they look at a spreadsheet and say, well, what's selling here? You know, what's selling? Well, 40k is selling, and so every game we make needs to be an appropriation of 40k on some degree or level, without realizing that most of the games in the Games Workshop umbrella are selling because people want alternatives. You know, people who went over to Horus Heresy were not going over to play 40k. They were going over to play Horus Heresy. You know what I mean? It was one of those, especially when we had the split between 8th and 7th. That's when you saw a huge influx of people going over to Horus Heresy. And I don't think that's an accident at all. You had a mass migration of people, as Mac has said it before, going over to play Horus Heresy. And a lot of Horus Heresy fans were not very happy with that, you know, because they have their own ways of doing the hobby, and it's not that doesn't quite fit into the 40k philosophy. But 3.5 being a thing, yeah, I agree. But also, the vast majority of people who wrote those codexes is now long gone, or they're working for Warlord Games. So I don't think we're ever going to see that again. And I think in terms of something else Maka brought up before, and that's there are a lot of people get confused about 40k because they see the sheer amount of models that are available right now, and we are eating good. In terms of take away the prices, I know, asking a lot, take away the prices and just look at the models. We are eating well. There are a lot of good stuff out there for you to buy if you've got limitless money, okay? None of us do, which is a shame, but that's where it is. But people see that and they say, okay, well, the game's healthy, without realizing, well, actually, for all of these multiple Space Marine units that you've got, well, about 20 of them now, you know, only 10 of them are really viable in competitive play. And even then, you can only take a certain loadout to even be legal in matched play, you know. So the sheer lack of expression, lack of choice, that's kind of the watchword of Grimdark Therapy. It's kind of why we started the show in the first place, because there is such a lack of expression, a lack of player choice, a lack of... We did an entire episode on War Gear, for fuck's sake, you know? Because it's so imperative.
That sounds like the best episode ever. I need to go find that one.
Yeah, I think it was the last one, wasn't it?
I love War Gear.
Was it the last one? Or the one before that?
It's Kaifa's one, I think. where we bought up...
Yeah.
I bought up the 3.5 fourth ed Tyranids Codex, where it was like... which was so interesting, because it was like...
Bioforms, yeah.
There's only like 12 items of war gear, and yet, oh my god, it feels like like if you use those 12 items of war gear, it's amazing what it does to that army.
It's cool when I was going back to the 3rd edition Tyranid Codex, 3rd and the 4th edition one. What I really like in the 3rd edition one is when it says like you've got like mutable genus or like stable genus, and it's like, you know, some of the Tyranid creatures are more easily adapted. Their genetic templates more easily adapted. They're just the way they've worded that, like it's mutable or it's stable. It's just it's cool. But I think it's something I've also noticed, how we never, you know, I agree with North. We never have had more beautiful models to pick from, and yet the choice has never felt so restricted. And I think the difference is that in the past, Games Workshop had a design philosophy. I do think there is a reason. I think this explains a lot of where their hang-ups are coming from. They've got these sort of policies / philosophies which they will not bend, they will not break. But they used to have this design philosophy of take a generic unit and then basically have this like buffet of special rules. Maybe they're regimental doctrines, maybe they're like Tyranid war gear that can, you know, you can adapt, whatever it may be. Maybe it's chaos with like different marks and stuff like that, and mutations and chaos boon tables, all that kind of stuff. But you take a generic unit, which in isolation looks quite bland, but then because you've got the buffet of special rules, that generic unit becomes so much more, because one person might look at that one person might look at that Imperial Guard squad and be like, okay, I'm going to give it close order drill and diehards, and it's going to be like deployed in a Napoleonic like line formation. And one other person might go, I'm going to take that Imperial Guard squad and I'm going to make it grenadiers. So it's got like carapace armor, and I'm going to make it so my entire army has to go in chimeras because they're mechanized. And someone else will see it and make it a drop trooper. Someone else will see it and give them all close combat weapons because of warrior weapons. And so what you've actually got is one generic unit, but the players make it into 1,000 different data sheets. And then what you have now in 40k is these are Death Korps of Krieg, and because we haven't got any points, there's obviously one best loadout. So there is only one way that Krieg unit ever gets run, ever. I think that's the big difference. They've gone from having generic units that you layer to this is a very specific thing.
Exactly right.
It's funny you say that because I have a piece of art up on the screen at the moment. I was just randomly scrolling through art in the background of this video, and it's a picture of like a Black Crusade going on type thing, and it's got Abaddon on there, and everyone surrounding him in that picture is something that you can build out of a box. As in, like, there's the Dark Apostle, the Master of Possession, the Executioner guy. There's, in the background, there's that Chaos Lord who's riding the demonic engine, that like spider scorpion looking one. It's like, it's all just, if you see, if this was again, talking incentives, incentive here from the company is show the person that is picking up the game exactly what they can buy. You see this cool model on the artwork, you can buy that model. Whereas if you went back 20 years, they would just show you some generic guy that they've painted just because he looks cool. And they're like, hey, I don't know, maybe you can convert him, maybe you can't, but isn't this cool? Like, it's a completely
there's that
different
piece of artwork, isn't there? So just remind me, there's a piece of artwork with like the Slanesh guy, and he's got like the Vox grill for his mouth, and he's got like the big like black like beady eyes. He's got like one of his his power armor is like exposed. You know, it's the one that that every like lore YouTuber still uses to this day for their thumbnail. And yeah, that's never been a model, and yet it's a very iconic piece of artwork.
Yeah, it's just very interesting because it plays into that whole, you know, for a long time I complained about Chaos Space Marines in that they never felt like, you should feel very different to play Night Lords as it plays when you're playing Iron Warriors. And yet, for the longest time, since 3.5 on the tabletop, it was really just down to the difference between the paint palette that you picked. Whereas today, there are rules around theming it, but the war gear isn't there. And again, this is a distinct difference between 3.5 and current. Is in a 3.5 era book, it wasn't just that you were playing, you know, Thousand Suns. It was, hey, here's all the Thousand Suns unique war gear, and it's not just locked to 5 units that are Thousand Suns units. It's, hey, it's everything in this codex can take this war gear in some way or another. Have at it. If you want to spend the points to do it, go for it. You're going to get some weird results. And I think it was something very intriguing about that. But from, again, the incentives, to link it back to the theme of the episode, the incentive for the company there is no incentive. Why would they reproduce that? What did they actually get out of it?
Well, they're... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I mean, I think one thing that people need to get about the discussion is that a lot of us have framed this discussion around expression, player choice, a lack of borders. You know, let's do. Sorry, not going political. You know what I mean? Like bringing down all of the things and expressing yourself.
I was gonna say, whoa, what kind of show you brought me on here? I watched your video the other day, North. You said you didn't want to talk about that stuff.
No, I think the thing is that we're not campaigning for a lack of stricture or a lack of rules or a lack of. I've always used the analogy of the sandbox. You stick a kid or even you on a beach and say, build whatever you want. You go, you're paralyzed. You're like, okay, well, what do I do? I've got all this sand, you know. But if you stick them in a sandbox and say, well, look, these are your defined borders, build something. Well, now you can, because you can visualize it better. we're not looking for rules that just let us take anything that we want all of the time. We're looking for stricture. We're looking for army organization charts. We're looking for all of those things. We want the game to provide a framework to express ourselves. We're not looking. The one thing that OPR doesn't do very well, I know, shock horror, is that it doesn't have that stricture. It just says use what you want, do what you want, and it's a good game. But after 4 or 5 games of OPR, you're sort of going, where's the meaning? Where's the meaning? Where's the theme behind my list? I know they've all got hammers, and things like that. But I can just take what I want. Well, okay, cool. But where's my expression? There is expression in structure. There's expression in rules. And we're not looking for Games Workshop to just say, hey, do what you want, express yourself, whatever war gear you want. No, that's going too far the other way. We want rules that are absolutely structured and robust, and also they allow you to express yourself with the army that you have, with the models that you have. That's basically what I was trying to say.
I think it's just as we were saying that, North, it kind of made me realize, it kind of made me think about what Mac was saying at the beginning about how what's the incentives that Games Workshop has taken away over the years, especially since the Great Reset of 8th edition, and this feeds into this idea of player choice and how there's been less and less of it over less and less granular choice over the years. And I think the two things actually go hand in hand, because I think if you look at what they did with 8th edition, they massively simplified the game. And they've been sticking to this mantra of simplification since 8th edition. If you look at Primaris Marines, they were so different to something like Tactical Marines, because Primaris Marines, everyone got the same gun, so it's a really simple unit for new people to get their heads around. And whereas you look at the Tactical Squad, people are like, there's much more choice there. Do you take your special weapon? Do you take your heavy weapon? What do you put your sergeant? But what I think, but where I think the wrong lesson can be learned from that, which I guess is the topic of today, just games of learning the wrong lessons, is there's this weird thing, and I don't know if it's just me, but there's this weird thing where everyone seems to think that new players are thick and they can't figure things out, and that things have to be spoon fed to them. But that you can't, if the models can be built in more than one way, then that's going to melt the brain of the poor normie, and they won't be able to figure it out. And it's like, well, hang on, there's a very specific kind of person that's going to get into tabletop wargaming in the first place, and that person is someone who's probably, whenever I see someone get brand new into wargaming, and someone gets a new box, whether they're young or old, what's the first thing that they typically do? They kit bash without even realizing it. They'll be like, when how many of you guys, when you were playing Warhammer the first time, you and your mates were getting into it, and either yourself or someone else in your game group, the first Space Marine conversion they ever did is make a Space Marine with a dual bolt pistol. It's a Tactical Marine with dual bolt pistol. Everyone did it. Everybody did it, and I think it's one of those things where they've taken this lesson of, oh well, we made it so Primaris are really 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 good, and they sell really well, but they only have a really specific loadout. There's no choice there, so that's really good for new players. That's really good for getting new people into the game. So that's what we're going to do to all the units now. And it's GW, people like Primaris Marines because they were true scale Marines. And if you had just remade the tactical squads that didn't look like ass, then you probably would have been able to do the same thing. But yeah, I feel like they've taken the wrong lesson away, and they've got the wrong incentive from the whole thing. New players, I've never met a new player who didn't mind learning how to build a model their way or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. The first thing I did with my Eldar was kit bash. We just throw things together, and because there's, how do I put it? Me making a model, I'd say I get a unit of 10 Space Marines, intercessors, and I build them, and then somebody says, oh, I like your intercessors. Well, really, what are they complementing? Your paint job, because your Space Marines are exactly the same. But if somebody walks up to your model and says, oh, I love what you've done with the bolt pistol on the back. Oh, I love what you've done with his cape. Is that green stuff? Oh, that's really cool. How did you do that? That's far more rewarding than actually bog standard. I like the color of red you chose for your Blood Angels, that kind of a thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you want bog standard Marines, absolutely go for it. But yeah, you are right. Like, kit bashing is the most essential thing, and a rule set should welcome kit bashing. It should, and there is strength in Games Workshop not making every model. We saw that I used Grey Knights as an example, right? Grey Knights is an army that for a long time had, 3 boxes? Paladins, Grey Knight Strike Squad, and your HQ choices. Everything else is normal Space Marine stuff, just painted in silver, right? Yeah. So with those, they would give you all of the things you wanted to make. You could make from a Grey Knight Strike Force, Grey Knight Strike Marines, Interceptors, Justicars, Champions, Brotherhood Champions, Grandmasters and Power Armor. All of those could be made from this one box. And then you got your Paladin box with you can make Paladins in there, Librarians, Grandmasters and Terminator Armor, and Inquisitor in Terminator Armor. Your normal Terminators. There are 5 or 6 different units you could make and mix and match from those sets. And if you wanted 5 Demon Hammers, you could do that in a Terminator box set. They were all there. It was really expensive to do in the game, but the game allowed you to express yourself in doing that. That's why I always say those are the best boxes Games Workshop ever brought out. Not because of the quality of the models, because compared to Primaris Marines and the size of them, it's a bit silly. But in the actual celebration of, hey, what can your imagination do? What kind of Grey Knight Brotherhood do you want to make? Well, here are these 2 boxes. Well, only 2 boxes? Yes, but all of the options are there. And any of the options you don't use can go straight in the bits box. And you can express yourself with another. Every single purchase of a Grey Knight unit grew your army 3 or 4 times, not just once. Like 3 or 4 times. Every single time you brought a new Grey Knight unit, you weren't just buying that unit, you're buying all of the other bits in that box as well. And it was actually a really economical army to make, and it was really easy to express yourself in creating your own Grey Knight army that's bespoke to you and what you wanted to do. That is not possible in modern 40k. It's simply not possible. There is not one army. I'm willing to be proven wrong if any of you have any sort of suggestions, but I don't think there is one army that provides that kind of expression in 40k right now.
I think you're
There's
right.
at least a caveat, right? There's at least.
Go on.
It's not. You can, with the limited options. Options are everything for sure, but as it relates to player expression. But at minimum, I think it's safe to say people can have a bit of expression within this much more limited sandbox, but it's not going to be very good. You're probably going to get a smackdown. Speaking from experience, when I play a list that's more thematic at the cost of the meta crunch, net listed sort of things you're expecting to see in a competitive list, the disparity is pretty clear.
Yeah, even if you just take a 90% powerful list, that and they take 100% powerful list, that 10% difference means you're going to lose.
Yeah.
That's the issue. You talk about SmackDown. Oh man, like I know it's how I'm laughing, but it's one of those like if you don't laugh you'll cry kind of moments. I do really wonder what it's going to be like for all these people that have come in 11th in 10th edition. Like I know one guy who's gone from like 4 armies to like 19 armies in 10th edition, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, I built them all up to like 2,000, just over 2,000 points. So when so that way they've got a little bit of flexibility. And I was like, oh my sweet summer child, when 11th edition drops and everything which is good now becomes bad, you are gonna be, because it's like his first edition, so he doesn't realize that everything gets inverted like every time, and he doesn't realize that right now You know, all your Nemesis weapons are the same, but you know, only one edition ago they were all really unique. And you know what Games Workshop's going to do? They were like, "Hey, we know you guys want a bit more like granularity in your war gear, so we've made it so the hammers are different to the halberds and blah 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 blah." And he's just been looking down at his models and being like, "Oh God, oh no, oh God." I was like, I tried to warn you, man. I tried.
Yeah.
You
First
did, like
time.
19 armies, you deserve what you get.
Yeah.
19 armies. I mean, you asked for
I
that.
can't really say that, but yeah.
We've all fallen into the trap of that, haven't we? I mean, that begs itself another question of, again, incentives. What was the incentive there that occurred at Games Workshop? Well, they went, we sold a unit armed one way, we changed the rules, we sold the same unit a second time. Like, if you're a company, it's basic maths, isn't it? You just go, oh, well, that. You know, it's spreadsheet balancing. You know, I don't know if people are familiar with this term. It's when you play a video game, right? I'll set an example. War Thunder. You play War Thunder and you bring out a tank, and the tank's not particularly good. So a lot of people don't play the tank, but there's this niche group of people that will gravitate towards it because it's not very good. And they just like the play style and they like the challenge. Typically, those people get really good with that tank, right? And they learn all the little things that you can exploit to make it perform. And then the people with the company on the spreadsheets, they look at it and they go, this tank here, everyone who plays it, they win 97% of their matches. They're killing more tanks than anyone else. This must be really overpowered. You know, because they're looking at it on the spreadsheet. They don't look at, you know, I think Games Workshop does a lot of that when it comes to the sales, right? Selling things. They look at it and they go, we did X, Y, and Z, and sales went up. And it's like, yeah, but did anyone have a spreadsheet of what the player's sentiment is towards the company after you did that move? Probably not. I would guess, judging by, you know, I think there are rare circumstances like the Heresy 3.0 and the FAQ / the Legacies, the Age of Darkness stuff that they dropped for that, which is, you know, like 100 pages of trying to fix it. And they're like, oh, no, honest, guys, like, we swear this was always going to happen. That's why we missed the deadline and we're updating it in real time on Warhammer Community, what was going to be. Oh, we got this in there. Oh, we also added this in now. Oh, like, I mean, if you believe that was always going to be that
Where
way.
are the Tartarus Terminators? Where are they?
They're in here, we swear. Look, they're Siege Tartarus. And by the way, we're FAQing regular Tartarus to get their power fist back. You're like, so why are they Siege Tartarus? No, don't question it. Don't question it. We were always going to do it this way. Yeah, it's just...
Don't think, just consume product and get ready for next product.
Yes, the red letter media statement, but it's I feel like it's very, very true. Like, there's a lot of spreadsheet balancing that must go on in the financial department, because it feels like, I don't know if there is true market research done, but I can only imagine that the incentives within the company are, they look and they go, this is popular. Therefore, I can replicate that success if I just port the features of this thing over and just wear this other game system like a skin suit. You know? And I think that there's been a lot of that going on, and 40k is the biggest offender. They don't realize that they create a toxic mess, in my opinion, every edition in 40k. They basically run it into the ground, and when the 40k players migrate away, they don't see it as, because it's not like they hand back their models, right? So you don't see that they're migrating away from the system. You just see that all of a sudden people are buying more stuff in your other systems. And rather than going, oh, they're buying less 40k because they're unsatisfied with the product, they go, oh, they've bought all the things this edition has to offer. So we'll have to add some new units for the next edition to re-incentivize them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it kind of brings us back to the first topic, which is like, look at what they've done to a lot of the other games. Look, I don't know what you guys think, because obviously I've got my perspective and my community, but I've been saying a lot, but I've not been asking a lot, and I want to ask something this time, which is like, do you think the changes that they've made to the other games have, from your perspective, they've had, let's say, like what they've done with like Lord of the Rings, what they've done with Heresy, what they've done with friggin' Blood Bowl in the last week? Do you think that with them basically doing this whole, if it's not in the box, we don't sell it, if we haven't got models for it, we don't sell it, that kind of thing? 40K fangers, I would say. Do you think what have you guys seen around that? Have your communities been bothered or not bothered? Like, has there been complaints? Because a lot of my people have been like, "Yeah, I'm not going to play Lord of the Rings anymore."
Yeah, I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of people saying, well, when we did the video on 3.0 Heresy, I had my inbox was just full of people. It was all Hobby Nightmares. I couldn't read them out in the end because it was just like, yeah, you don't like the game. That's not quite Hobby Nightmare. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just don't like the game. But like, there was so many of people just going, okay, what do I do now? I'll go and play 2.0. You know, they would sort of, the email will start off with like, it's like the 7 stages of grief. You know, it would go down, and by the end of the video, by the end of the email, nearly every single one went, "Oh, let's play 2.0." It's like, well, just do that then. You know, go back and play the whole thing. Do what Macca's doing. Go back and play 3.5, or make your own. You know, stuff like that. But yeah, with Heresy, there was a huge groundswell of people just leaving, just saying that these people, as much as I want to like Games Workshop, they cannot be trusted with IPs that we like. So we are now removing their right to do that, and we're going to go do 2.0, because now the minute people don't realize that the minute Games Workshop move on from an edition, it's now in the wild. It's not technically open source. You can't make money from it, but you can play it, and they will never touch it again. It's safe. That's the thing with 3.5 and 4th and 5th. It's safe. They're never going to fuck it up. So, you know, that's always my advice. Go back to the thing that you like. You can still use your models in it, but yeah. Horus Heresy was definitely a big one for me.
I don't like the cultural vandalism of the current fluff and background. I feel that the fluff, to a degree, has to be sacrosanct. And I think this is one of the strongest things they have going for them as a company is their background universe. And ironically, they are tearing it down at every opportunity, in my opinion. Which, if there are no stakes, because it's an ever-shifting goalpost, then there's nothing to be invested in, is my long-held opinion. And when I look at the way they handle it, there was a documentary 15 years ago, probably now, called The People versus George Lucas, and it asked the question, referring to the Star Wars original trilogy and how George Lucas had done like multiple special editions of it. There was the famous 97 re-release, but also other updates they'd done for DVDs and Blu-ray over the years of Star Wars. Had said, at what point, you know, this is so ingrained into the cultural zeitgeist, do you have to stop messing with it? And it's now really in the people's ownership, because it's a cultural milestone, you know, like a Lord of the Rings. It's something that everyone just knows. You know, you can refer to like a "you shall not pass." You know, "I love you, I know." You know, these sayings are so ingrained, and it's like when you change something up now, even if you are the original artist, it's grown bigger than you. It's moved beyond you, right? You may have the financial rights to it and such. And I feel like Games Workshop's games and their lore kind of are falling into that bracket. I look at what they did with Lord of the Rings and the gameplay, and it needed a culling of some of the miniatures. I 100% agree. They killed like 17 factions off in that game. When I look at what they did to Heresy, I had a person the other day on my video go, "I don't understand how you of all people, Macca, could not even give Heresy 3.0 a go. Like, it's a better game system." Like, they don't understand. I'm not interested in what it has to offer. They had a game that I liked. It was called the Horus Heresy, and they just changed things, not because it needed it, but because they felt like it, because they thought, you know what, I can earn 50 cents selling the current thing, I can earn $1 selling another thing. So they picked another thing. I'm not begrudging them that. I'm not going to go out and call them all the names under the sun and send them a petition and, you know, nail a letter to Nottingham's door, you know, with a list of grievances. No point. It's not for me. I don't want to devote my energy to covering it. What I will say is, I asked the question on that video in the comments, how did communities responding? And about 2/3 of the responses to that, we're talking well over 80 responses, by the way, on that one comment alone. 2/3 of them are like, community's dead. The other third was community is thriving. So it did pick up in some areas, right? It created new areas. But for many people, they're like, no, the people that we're interested in are just not now. So it crashed and burned, that approach. However well you perceive the edition as doing, I'm not here to debate the pros or cons of it, but it was just not for me, and it evidently was not for many other people. So I think the way that they've handled it, to answer your original question, I know I was very long and meandering, and I apologise, is that it has not worked in either the case of Lord of the Rings or in the case of Horus Heresy, and I would also say, actually, in the case of 4th edition Age of Sigmar, which I do not believe is doing particularly well. Personal opinion.
That's a biggie. Yeah, no, that's a biggie. And I think, I mean, someone did a video the other day that blew up that was, is Age of Sigmar 4.0 dead? And the overwhelming consensus was Spearhead is great, Sigmar itself is rubbish. Yeah. But you know what's funny? Just going back to your bit about Horse Heresy and how you saw like a pickup of people saying that the game's good. Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I've actually worked out what it is. Now, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe people say, "Oh, Molly, you didn't want to admit that Horse Heresy is good." No, man. Like, I think what it is that everyone who thinks it's shit has left the game. So of course, the only people that are still talking about it are the ones that think it's good. So that's why now you see a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, I think Horse Heresy is really good," and because people who don't like it have moved on, they're not talking about it anymore. So I think that's maybe where I've seen because I've seen a few people say you should try out 3.0, and I every time, because I don't know if does anyone else get this. You go, maybe I should try that thing out. Maybe I should try that game out. And you decided like months ago you weren't going to try it. Maybe it's like Sigmar. Maybe it's like Heresy. But whatever it may be. Maybe it's another game system entirely. You know, one you've had a non-GW one you've had on your mind for ages. Or maybe it's like a video game. But you never tried it, and then you go, I should look at it again. And you look at it again, and the moment you start looking at it, you go, oh yeah, no, that's all the reasons why I didn't want to try it. I forgot. Yeah.
I
don't want to try Heresy. It's got I don't want the damage system. I want instant death.
Can I give a bit of a philosophical answer to that? I'd have invited all these people on, and I'm doing all this talking. I feel so bad about it.
I think they're pretty even, man. It's okay.
I think there's a point in a person's life, especially a man's life. I can't speak on behalf of women, but you may have all gone through this. The moment of clarity hits, where suddenly you go from being a little boy, right? Even though you're a grown adult, you're a little boy mentally, where you go, you know what? I am 100% confident in my own decision-making process, and I will wear the consequences of my decision regardless of what it is. It's like something that just a switch gets flicked in your head one day, right? Maybe it's the first step on the road to like grumpy old man who yells at cloud. But, you know, like if I'm going in to negotiate, like buying a house now, I don't sit there going, oh, what should I do? What should I make? Yep, this is what I am going to bid. And I'm not moving past this number. Like you feel utter surety in your decision making. You know, I don't know if you guys have reached this, but I have and truly hit this point. And I was able to, by the time of 8th edition 40K, I'm like, no, that's not for me. Right? It may be a great game system. I'm not going to say it's crap and begrudge those that play it. It's just not for me. Regardless. I don't have that need to go and, maybe if I test. No, I don't need to treat it like drinking cough medicine. I don't need to try and like get a taste for it and be like, oh, it's really not so bad, you know, if you you put some water in afterwards, you know, and try and wash the flavor out. Like, no, if I don't like it, I don't like it. That's it. I'm not tempted to go further than that, and that's how I feel about many Games Workshop systems now, and it's why I'm so interested in older systems where they can't come in and change them, or other game systems entirely. You know, I've got Clan Ghost Bear for BattleTech. I've got some awesome stuff from Cool Many or Not. Like, I've got the Song of Ice and Fire. I've got Ankh, Gods of Egypt. I've got Chronicles of Hate. I've got Drop Fleet Commander. Like, I've got some other fun stuff, you know, that has my interest.
Yeah, it's funny you say a lot. You know, of the games that you play are outside of GW. Now, my brother and I did had a chat the other day, and he doesn't really play any Games Workshop anymore. And he used, 10th edition just came along, and he just basically stopped playing it. And he said for him the choice was he had to choose between Games Workshop and everything else. And at this point, there's actually more outside of GW than in. Which is obviously, we're not really on the topic of the video anymore, but I just thought it was kind of interesting how a lot of people feel. Not only I think this is not only true for people's personal stuff, but maybe we're going to be getting a little bit spicy now. But a lot of content creators feel like they can't go outside of Games Workshop or they'll die, and it's like, no, there's so much more out there that you can enjoy.
I think that's a valid fear. Like I get why people think that, because they see the same thing. I brought it up in a video the other day. Like, you know, I want to be more positive, and the reason why I try to only do one Games Workshop video a week if I can is because
it makes you angry.
Yeah, but also negativity sells. Like I noticed those videos do very well, and I don't want to be beholden to the cycle. You know what I mean?
I can only talk about GW once, because if I talk about it more than that, everyone will say I'm complaining. But I haven't got anything nice to say about them. They fucked it again.
No, but you can't control what they do, and if they do something shitty, then you've got to call it. And the thing is, I don't want to be beholden to that cycle of. I don't want to be in a position where I'm happy Games Workshop have fucked something up because now I get to do a video. That's not a good way to live.
That way leads darkness. That way leads darkness. Yeah.
Yes. We know that they are out there. We know who you are, all the YouTubers. We see you. You know, there's another disaster at Games Workshop, owning the chuds and all this other nonsense that the team come up with. You know, like keep all that shit out of my hobby, please. I like to play with my toy soldiers. And yes, they are a terrible company. They do terrible things. But the vast majority of people working for them are not terrible people. They're people who want to sell you toy soldiers at the end of the day. I always say to people, do one trip to Warhammer World before you judge. Before you truly close the door on Games Workshop, go to Warhammer World and see how they treat you. Because they do. They really do go above and beyond. They're so nice and so good. And like... It is Mecca. Like you've got to go there at least once, and then walk away. And even if you don't like what Games Workshop do, you can approach it with a balanced opinion of, yes, they do all of this bad stuff, but also, like, you know, but being beholden to that cycle is not a nice place to be mentally. So that's why I choose not to do it. It's just Games Workshop are relentless with their ineptitude. So, you know, they don't really give you much of a choice sometimes.
It was funny the other day, because obviously I've been a salty boy, and there's actually I want to come back to read the incentives thing and Macca's thing, because it's. But I want to just mention this quickly. I did a stream the day, and when I was like, you know, tagging everyone on the Discord, hey, going live, I was like, guys, GW have stopped fucking up for 5 minutes, so it's going to be a positive stream tonight, and everyone was like, hooray! But so we've talked about them getting incentives from the wrong things, but what about incentives from the right things? Because Warhammer the Old World, it's picking up. Like, I would say Warhammer the Old World, no one would have said this 2 years ago when it came out, but I truly think that it has become the second biggest game that Games Workshop does. I think it's flown past AOS. It's thanks to Games Workshop.
Oh, I can tell you 100% why that is, and it's not an incentive thing at all. It's purely because it's the Horus Heresy. It's what Heresy version 1 was. It was sure, here you go, palm it off to some department, go play with that. We're not particularly interested in it. There's no appetite for that. Nobody cares. Do what you want with it. Then the game is not really touched by mainstream Games Workshop. Therefore, someone who's not doing spreadsheet balancing can do a lot more with it. Because I thought Old World would do much worse than it has performed. So one of my rare Macrodamus failures. What happens, therefore, is instead of having the company come and go, no, you must have this. This is going to be the big item that sells this month. No, it's just a person who cares about the game system, spitting out content, which is relatively on the pulse, And because Big Games Workshop is not touching it, because they're like, well, no, we want people to be interested in Age of Sigmar. Like, we're only doing Old World because of Total Warhammer, and we don't want to leave money on the table that Mantic or Kings of War was soaking up or something like that. So it's because the company's not touching it. That's the incentive, really, is they're not touching it. At some point, though, Old World will be so big if it continues to look after the player base that the company will go, oh, this is a cash cow that needs more milking. Let's go mess with it, which is what they did to Heresy, and that's what causes the problems.
Well, I was wondering. I think this is what I was saying. There's two sort of directions they can go, right? Because they could see that Old World is picking up, and they can go, okay, well, this is picking up, so we need to now go in there and 40Kify it and simplify it. And honestly, if they try what they've done with 40K, and they're like, your characters can only have certain things because that's what we sell in the model in the box. It's just going to completely wipe it out because everyone's built like custom characters for Old World based off like the magical items and whatnot. But But what I'm saying is there in this view of let's not be negative, let's actually see it, let's hope that there is a better way. Do you think Games Workshop could look at Warhammer the Old World and see it becoming successful because it's the old way of doing things? It's the old to hit. It's the old to wound. And I don't know if I think I'm quite in tune with the Warhammer the Old World community, and I know I'm talking. We're no longer in dozens. We're getting up to hundreds of people who, when they get a taste of Old World, they're 40K players who go, I'm going to try something else out instead of 40K. And whether they come to that early in the edition or whether a lot of them are coming to it later in the edition now, obviously with the end of edition drought. But they're coming to Old World, and it's not becoming a game that they play. It's becoming the game that they play. And I now have, in my community alone, like I said, probably getting into hundreds rather than dozens. And I know personally, real life, so many die-hard 40K players. I'm talking people who, if you talk to them about anything other than Warhammer 40K, even just normal real life, if their eyes would glaze over, all they wanted was Warhammer 40K. People who would say they would never play anything else, who now only play Old World. Like, yeah, this game's just better. And so, is there a potential for Games Workshop to go, oh, that's what people like, then start thinking about applying lessons from that to other games? I'm not saying necessarily they'll apply it to like they've released Warhammer the Old World. What if we got like 40K Classic Edition? Is there a possibility of that?
I answer your question with another question.
But yeah.
Do you think that they, as a company, will pick up on the fact that it is popular in spite of its rule system, which you could argue is clunkier? I don't think it is. I think it's just a side grade. Or do you think they will, again, you mentioned it earlier, you think they treat the average hobbyist like a simpleton? Do you think they will say, no, that's just the old grognards that are attracted to that game system, and that's why it's successful, because it just appeals to that one target demographic, but a new player would never be interested in getting into that game. They're interested in 40K. We've decided that for them. Which, do you think that there's any truth to that? And does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think if you'd asked me that question 6 months ago, I would, well, maybe not even 6 months ago, when Old World first came out, I think Old World, it blew up because it turned out that all those people that still wanted to play Warhammer Fantasy had basically just been like sleeper agents. They'd just been dormant for like 7-8 years while Sigmar was rolling around. And the moment Fantasy came up again, they were like, yeah, I'm just going to go and play Warhammer. I'm just going to go play Fantasy. I don't care about Sigmar. Or some of them, dropped Sigmar, went to Fantasy, and some of them just hadn't played either, like myself, and just waited for basically Warhammer the Old World to come out. So I think that was how it started at first. But honestly, in the last 6 months, and then this is probably something we need to talk about as well. I don't know if you guys noticed like the massive drop off in 40K. Like, it's been a bigger drop off than I've seen in any other edition. But circle back to that one. But in the last 6 months, I've seen so many people who started in 10th edition, who all they have known is Newhammer, go, yeah, I'm trying out Old World. Oh my God, I love it. I want this. Because it's like what I said before. Games Workshop thinks that we need to make the game simpler for the new players. And it turns out that there's a very specific kind of person that likes to play war games. And those people, war gamers, those people like to really get down into the weeds and build lists and customize models and everything. So I don't know, maybe, back in, I don't know, I feel like Warhammer Old World does it's kind of like K47. It really makes you look at 40k in a new light and go, wait, why do we do things like that now?
It's more like Games Workshop need to admit that their customer base are a bit weird. I think they're addicted to this thought that they're going to be mainstream and they're going to have mums and dads and office workers and lawyers doing this game. And by the way, those people exist because a lot of people who are driven to be in careers that are very high earners are very weird. They're obsessive. They like the nerds, right? That's not the problem. The problem is Games Workshop are chasing the normies. They're chasing the Netflix watchers. They're chasing the people who will vegetate in front of their phones all over the time. Those are not people who are going to be into the hobby long term for the most part. Some of you might be. Congratulations, welcome. But a lot of them won't be. And instead of just admitting that, wargamers like granular things. We like to delve into rules. We like to pull them apart. We like to, we'd like to have rank and flank and where can I charge from and options like that on the tabletop. Some of these decisions Games Workshop makes seem to be made by people who don't understand what wargaming is or who wargamers are. And that is the biggest failing of their games right now. Is that it's simplified, not simple, is such corporate drivel. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So your game, what you're telling me is you don't have a game. It's simplified, not simple. What that means is you don't have a rule set. Because it's one or the other. You can't have, you can have simplified, or you can have a not simple rule set. That's it. Because any well-made game can have a not simple rule set that's easy to learn, hard to master. That's what 3rd edition was, 4th edition, 5th edition, right? It was easy to get the core rules down, and then you introduce new things as you went on. Nowadays, it's just, they're obsessed. They're obsessed with normie money. They're obsessed with people who, imagine, me and the missus just got finished watching Wednesday, right? Imagine if that school she goes to was trying to get normies in there. Do you know what I mean? Hey, I know we're a school full of werewolves, so why don't we open it to everybody? Well, then it's not the school anymore, is it? It's just a normal school with some freaks in it. You
just got your average. I won't say this; people will get upset. Nah, fuck it, I'm going to say it anyway. You've got those you imagine if in Wednesday you had some Scouse chav walking around about, all right, la, it would completely ruin the immersion.
Exactly.
Yeah, Wednesday sells itself to the kooky goth kids.
Yep.
And that's what it's trying. And doesn't do anything else other than that.
Doesn't have to. It knows its audience, and they know the minute the thing with Hogwarts, right? There's a reason why my Muggles don't go to Hogwarts, because it would just be a normal school, and it wouldn't be as interesting anymore. Same with 40k. There's a reason why it's for wargamers. It's supposed to be for wargamers.
They don't learn maths at Hogwarts, do they?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're not getting O levels or A levels, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, but do you think what do you think of the drop off that's happened? Do you think that's part of everything that we've been talking about with them oversimplifying things? And because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I've seen the biggest drop off with 10th edition. It's like it just hit a cliff and it just went.
It's the cycle. It's the cycle. Every edition pulls in a large pool, and then that pool grows disenchanted with the edition. And the more people you pull in, if you dangle a shiny object that easily gets people's attention, you can dangle another shiny object elsewhere and pull that same attention back away. And I feel that's what happens continuously. But you dropped a lucrative box set, right? I mean, incentive, talk about incentives, the incentive of there must be a flagpole release each year, because that's the incentive is we need to hit the sales numbers. And the easiest way to do it is to drop a new edition of the game, even if it's not required. And you don't think there's going to be a flow-on negative to that? Well, I think the drop-off is exactly that point in Microcosm. But I'm interested, Kaifa, I haven't heard from you in a while. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been quiet because everything everyone's saying is so agreeable. This is what it is. I mean, yeah, the incentive is an interesting topic because it's not. I think it's something everyone feels, but it's an interesting discussion to put into specifics, right? Because yeah, the drop off is real. Players will bleed out and get disenchanted, and then GW will dangle some starter box with new Terminators or something like this, and then everyone will get all wet in the eyes and emotional and want to buy. I have to buy it, right? And so it seems to repeat. I mean, there's all sorts of lame incentives that we can attribute to modern.
Did you not see? Did you not see new Marnius Kelgar or new Kato Sicarius?
Oh my god, I don't.
It's an incentive.
I mean, Sicarius is fine. I just fucking second Calgar is so stupid to me.
I don't know how I'm going to survive this week. They didn't release a new Calgar model this week, man. Like, it's the old one's so trash now. It's so out of date. It's from last week.
Sorry, I brought it up because
problem.
It's very much an incentive though, because they've now learned nostalgia sells, which is it's a dangerous drug, right? Like media in general. Games Workshop always amuses me because my personal take, again, I don't want to tell people watching the episode how to think, right? But my take is Games Workshop's a good 5 years behind the rest of the world. Like they live in a bubble. You know how we talk about like country towns exist in a different time to like major cities? Games Workshop is the equivalent of that at a corporate level, where they still want to do the identity politics. They're like, oh, let's get into streaming, like at the point where streaming companies are collapsing. Like they're behind the ball with things, right? And it's just funny to me because Games Workshop is like, oh, nostalgia sells, like after like Star Wars has crashed and burned and all these other things have happened. It's like, yes, it does sell, but that drug doesn't give you the same hit once you've had it too many times. Like there's only so many old characters you can bring back and resculpt again before people are over it. And like we've had one Calgar, yes, but what about second Calgar? Like, there is such a thing as too much, and you can't just sell the same thing forever, perpetually. Maybe Games Workshop is more immune to this than most, but I still think that there is an upwards limit on that trend.
Yeah, I mean, if they think nostalgia is sells, it kind of, if that's an incentive they've learned. What do we think about? Like I said, I said earlier, 40k Classic Edition, and I sense a general groaning from the crowd. But if they know that, if they've seen Old World, and that did well off nostalgia, but also it's also getting new players in, and Games Workshop, I'd fucking buy it. Would you buy it? I'd buy it.
I'd buy it. Like that. Can you imagine like if they brought back Goblin Green bases and they battle reports that were in White Dwarf? You see they brought that back and they put them on the box. Like, hey, here are your blue and yellow Ultramarines. Here are your dude. That would sell. Like that would save the company on a, not that it needs saving, but on a burning of Prospero level.
The spirit, the spirit of the company.
Because that burning of Prospero was so saved the fucking company, and I swear to God, they would make so much money doing that. It's cynical, but it would work.
But when you say that, there's one other thing that they've learned, which is something they learned the hard way from Heresy versus 40k in like first edition Heresy, which is you can't have two systems that use the same models. They just compete against each other.
That's what I was going to bring up. I have a hard time believing Games Workshop will want to create a competing system within 40k, because they're like, I feel everyone who wants to enjoy 40K presently can feel the divide between competitive net listing and the humble wargaming roots of putting the Goblin Green Bases crew, the people who are very fond of that age and would love to dive back in, right? But GW seems pretty clear. I mean, if 11th edition comes out and I'm proven wrong, I'll actually be very happy for it. But I'm very doubtful Games Workshop will be able to even create a divide of the player base within an edition between competitive and, let's say, passionately casual. Right? Like, I feel like less term because it kind of implies like you're not really in the hobby, but there's people who are very serious with the hobby, but they're not interested in competitive tournaments and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think the argument is really framed in, will Games Workshop ever do this? Because they won't. Because as you just said, that they don't like to dilute their own systems, and quite rightly so. I think the point is, it would sell. I think that's the point. In that there is a huge audience for this that would absolutely eat it hook, line, and sinker. They could charge £200 for this box set, and it would still sell. It would sell out. Yeah. It'd be gone. Especially if they use Primaris Marines and then give Primaris Marines the grill helmet. Can you imagine if they did that and made made them, or just made the normal tactical Marines as big as Primaris Marines for that box set? It would absolutely fly off the shelf. They would make so much money. They'll never do it because sometimes they're allergic to making money and making people happy. But it would absolutely sell, I think.
I think for me, it feels like Games Workshop likes money, and there must be. So you've mentioned your channel, North, like the funnel. Like they're really good at getting new people in, right? Yeah. And there must be at this point. There are two very distinctive audiences. There are the grognards and the new guys, and I think the new guys, by and large, they're going to go to Warhammer 40k main, new hammer, whatever you want to call it. But I think there's probably enough. Firstly, I think there's enough old grognards now which feel like they've been left behind. Pushed out is the wrong term because I don't think they've been pushed out. I think they've been left behind. Our time is now, old man. But just one weapon skill versus weapon skill. No, you hit on a fixed value now, and I think there's enough people that now want that old school stuff, and that's why I think the backlash to Heresy 3.0 was so big, because I think it was a lot of grognards being very disappointed because they were like, screw it, I've got this other game that I'm going to go to that plays like Old Hammer, and they look over, it's like, it's not Old Hammer anymore. So if they release Classic Edition, I think they could, it's like what they did with Warhammer, the old world, they'd bring back all these players that never stopped wanting to play 40k, they just felt like they got left behind. And at the same time, that'll give it the initial boost, and then over time you'll get new players who'll come in and go, "What's the difference between New Hammer and Classic?" And they'll look at New Hammer and they'll see everything's nice and simplified and easy for them, and they'll look over at Classic and go, "Oh my god! Like, look at all the extra numbers. I like numbers. Let me find out what those numbers mean," because they're wargamers, right? So they're going to want to go deeper and deeper. So I don't know. I like you said. A lot of people here said, like, I'd buy it if they did it. And I know I'd buy it if they did it as well. So I don't know. It feels like a no-brainer, but like I said, maybe it's a whole like internal competition thing where they don't want to do it.
Yeah, it would dilute the already, lapsing player base. And it'd be, when do you do it? Like, when in the life cycle of an edition of 40k do you introduce a competitor internally that will absolutely rinse it hook, line, and sinker? Because the other thing it will do, it would expose their wrong thing. It would expose the fact that as soon as it sells well, as soon as old Hammer, old 40k, classic 40k outsells normal 40k, because it will, then their investors will go, well, why are you even doing new 40k? Why are you doing 11th, 12th edition? Just do this.
But it assumes that there's not a degree, I don't want to say hubris, but something to that effect, which I feel is very strong within the company, of this is the system you're getting, regardless of how you feel about it. And no, we won't go back and rewrite this edition because it's perfect. We've decided that for you.
Well, there's an incentive
I think
to not fix things, so you can sell a new edition as well.
yeah, but if your Games Workshop, bear with me through this thought because I'm still putting it together. You can probably hear the groaning of rusty cogs turning in my brain. But if your Games Workshop, you're like, hey, even if I botch the rules, still sells. Raziel did a video just the other day that I came across where he mentions this very thing. It's like, if you've listened to them and you believe that they are working, up to 7 years in advance, they're already working on 13th edition, potentially. So they're not even worried about trying to get out a good product with the next edition of the game. They're already looking at the next product and the one after that. So why on earth would they do a classic Warhammer when they go, you know what, we can just continue down the road we're heading, send the story in whatever direction we like, and you're just going to buy it anyway, and whatever players we hemorrhage, we're just going to pick up elsewhere, so it'll all work itself out in the end, and we're not beholden to having to please a bunch of unpleasable, grumpy grognards who are never happy with whatever they get. We can never get it perfect for them anyway, so why even bother? Because the incentive, I think, that's there is, frankly, you don't need to write a good game. And you don't even need to have particularly great models. I think there are plenty of competitors who make better models than Games Workshop in some areas. It's got to be good enough because they're a very captive audience. I think that's where the incentive lies.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that's a good point, but I do think I've worked in the corpo world. I'm sure we've all worked with it in some capacity at some point. And the moment it becomes the moment that kind of mentality starts seeping into management is the moment that I start updating my CV, because I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to go to shit. So yeah. But you guys mentioned like internal competition versus, like they don't want to compete internally. But what if there's a game externally which is competing? I think Games Workshop would much rather have a game that's competing internally than to have a game that's,
well, I think
want that.
Isn't that why they grudgingly bought back the old world? I mean, that's why they bought back Blood Bowl first of all, the specialist games, because Dreadball, I think it was out there in the wild. Like, oh, there's a market for that. Well, that's our audience. That's our money. What are you doing?
Yeah,
because and there hasn't really been a game system that was equal to, say, Battlefleet Gothic. The closest we come is something like Dropfleet Commander, and now in the rumor engine and such, they're starting to say Battlefleet Gothic more often. You know what I'm picking up what I'm putting down here. They create game systems for the specialist games that have a direct counterpoint elsewhere. And it's only then that they grudgingly sort of introduce it. And then when the competitor inevitably goes, well, I can't compete with that, and gets rid of their product, then Games Workshop basically stops supporting the product. You see that with things like how they treat Kill Team and how they treat Warhammer Underworlds and how they treat Warcry. I may be completely misreading the situation, but that's what I think, what my eyes are telling me. What do you guys think?
Well, when there's no, we've spoken about authorship as well, like past episodes, and like so I'm thinking of it from the rules writing perspective, right? Like you're a entry level rules writer at Games Workshop, right? You've made it. You're doing the thing you've always wanted to do, and then like you don't have any level of authorship, and then you also know that you already have to. Everything you're about to do will be undone. So there's no incentive from even the one who's passionate. Like if you're a real go-getter, passionate rules writer, you know that all your baby's going to have to get overridden in 3 years. So I think, like that seems like a major problem. I don't know. I just never really thought of like rules writing choices ad nauseum over the channel's lifetime. But I never really thought about it from that point of view, and that's like terrible, especially if there are 2 editions, like you mentioned, like a 7-year development time.
Why am I?
Going around, right? That's just kind of crazy to me.
And then you're just like, as an employee, you're just like, well, you're just phoning it in. I think, that's a really, 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 really good point, because if the work you do, is going to be invalidated in especially as you get closer towards the end of edition, like 12 months, 11 months, 10 months, 6 months, like you just gotta start phoning it in. It's like, oh, it's just a 9 to 5 job. I don't give a shit. It doesn't really matter what I do. They're gonna rewrite it anyway.
Mate, if you
Yeah,
imagine
I can't
if you're
think of
writing
anything
it
more disheartening.
if
Sorry,
you're
sorry,
writing
go ahead.
if you're writing the 10th edition equivalent of like Codex World Eaters, or what was the Imperial Guard was the very last 9th edition codex where it was like
It was just it was
Yeah.
World Eaters. Guard
Oh, yeah,
Guard
those
World
two.
Eaters.
yeah, it was like 3 months out, not even from the edition changing over. And like often they've done that in the past where also that codex tends to be one of the first ones to get a new version with more miniatures. It's like that would be so depressing to be the guy that wrote like Sisters of Battle 8th edition 40k. They came out like the last codex of 8th edition 40k. They were like the third codex, I'm going to say, of 9th. I could be totally wrong on that, but it was early. And then they added in like the Paragon war suits and all that kind of thing. It's like, oh, how depressing. Like you basically just wrote half the book for someone else and then they wrote the rest of it for the next game system and rewrote all your stuff. Like, oh, that would just kill you, wouldn't it?
I think that's why you see such a difference sometimes between them. I mean, again, I'm just going to make this about Conflict 47 because I'm obsessed with that game. I look at the Conflict 47 rulebook and it feels like it's someone's baby.
Yeah. So somebody put time and effort and love into that.
Well, they're probably not sitting
Really,
there
yeah.
thinking, let's make sure that Conflict 47 second edition or whatever comes out in exactly 3 years' time. They're probably not sitting there on that landmine, are they?
Mm.
They're probably looking
No.
at it from a lot more organic perspective because I dare say their company is not beholden to the same financial stresses that Games Workshop is. You know, size of the organization, the amount of capital expenditure that they have, the, you know, parasites at the share board. You know, the incentives are just so massively different, right? Like even if you were to assume like Games Workshop had some really good people in the right spots, it's still such a massive ship, you know, to turn. You know, like an oil tanker takes 7 kilometers to, you know, turn 180 degrees. It's the same thing with
Fair.
Games Workshop. You know, like even if
They
you have
have
people in
shown
the
they
right
can adapt
spots.
quickly, though. They have shown they can
Yes,
remarkably quickly turn the
yes.
franchise around.
Horus Heresy.
That's true. Yeah, they've shown how quickly they can burn things. They've shown how quickly they can turn things around. Like,
But you know what?
I think,
That also is proof in the pudding, though. That Horus Heresy FAQ slash Legacy Age goes to show you just like you can knock out something in a weekend if you really want it. That company,
yeah,
you know, it is
Yeah, I think
doable.
because people do say they work in like years and years and years, and I wonder if there's an element of some stuff they work on is years in advance, and some stuff they work on is quite
I was
quick.
about to say that. Yeah. I honestly think that's the case.
I think all
Because,
the rules and that are knocked out literally on the terps on a weekend, but the miniatures are what they release, like what they're working on years in advance. They're sitting there going, all right, I need this mold in Q1 of 2027. So let's get this sculpt done. Let's get the the CAD file and that put on record. And then, in 2027, when this model actually goes in production, then we'll look at putting the rules together in 5 minutes for the codex. That's my assumption.
That's how it feels, certainly.
Yeah, that's my assumption from coming from production side of things. Of like, well, if I'm making my molds, how long does it take for me to go through the engineering process? Quite a long time. So, but the way they write their rules seems like like first draft, like it's pretty good.
That'll fucking do. Yeah, I think because an example of them turning things around quickly. I think when they saw how dogshit 7th edition went, they turned 8th out quite quickly, and when they saw how well Old World was doing, I don't think Cathay was planned. Some people will push back on this one, but I don't think Cathay was planned. I think they turned Cathay around inside of a year. Because I mean,
it probably helps that Total Warhammer had CA had done all those sculpts. So all that design process the Games Workshop would normally do in-house was done. Even if they had input as a company, like that is a huge part of your conceptualization of a model is the back and forth over how it should look, what the size of it should be, what's the style going to be. Like that was all sorted for them.
That's a good point. Yeah, that normally it's people who get that relationship from Games Workshop, don't they? From like video game companies. This was an example of it going back the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
so rare that you, like with the Games Workshop product, look at the aftermarket, right? 3D printing. All the people that design STLs, including myself in 3D, we take our cue from Games Workshop. You know, we're looking at what they have done already. Whereas CA, Creative Assembly, doing Total Warhammer, it's the inverse of that. They don't have anything really apart from like one or two old John Blanche sketches of what, you know, might be in Cathay. They don't have anything to work off. So it's an entirely blank canvas, which is a very different situation, right? Because like if I went out today and I'm like, oh, I'm going to design a Space Marine tank, you know it has to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Like, and if it doesn't, people are going to be like, that isn't a Space Marine tank. Like, look at the Kratos tank for Horus Heresy. That thing is divisive. People either love it or hate it. The Rogel Dawn tank, Imperial Guard, that's another one of those where it's like, yeah, okay, I guess it's Imperial Guard, like it roughly follows the rules, but, you know, again, I would say a divisive vehicle, which, you know, people, some love it, some hate it. Different kettle of fish when, you know, you're creating and it's like, oh, you need to make something that looks like it's Warhammer. By the way, it's on the other part of the world and it's based on ancient China. Oh, okay, we did 3 kingdoms. Let's cut and paste a few things over and, you know, we'll just Warhammer it up a bit. Just dial it up to 11. You know?
What if we reuse all the 3 kingdoms I said and throw a dragon in there? Yeah, fuck it, that'll do.
Yeah. What do we call them? I don't know. Ying Miao Miao Ying. Like it's yeah. It's I don't know, but I think
do wonder if sometimes, because obviously the culture at Games Workshop these days is going to be different to the culture it was back in the day. You do wonder if they sometimes look at some of this old world stuff and they're like, oh my god, they called all the Chinese things Ming Yao. It's like, oh my fucking
people. By the way, who are listening and don't understand, in Cathay in Total Warhammer, the 2 like characters they have basically had the same name, just flipped back to front for like the brother and sister, and it just you just sit there like, really, like that's okay, cool. Like there is definitely some jokes I could say. That would get me into a lot of trouble, but fuck, that'd be funny. So yeah, I guess, but yeah, it's all incentives, right? Well, that's all it comes back to at the end of the day, and why I came up with this topic. And it was a couple of weeks ago now that I mentioned this in a bit of a group chat to everyone. I'm like, I think it's just so easy to misconstrue and to take away the wrong incentives.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And more than any malicious factor, I actually put down a lot of their actions, the more I look at the company, to that just simply following the money and drawing the wrong conclusions because they succeed in spite of themselves and they're not capturing the data to tell them where they've messed up along the way.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good. I think it has been genuinely fascinating looking at what they. And it's a fascinating. It's going to sound really bad if you're one of these people that plays these games because you're going to be like, this isn't fascinating for me. This is heartbreaking. But it has been from an outside perspective, and for lack of a better term, it's been genuinely fascinating to see them speed run what they've done to 40k in other game systems and see how it has backfired. And I think that's, and maybe with 40k there was an element of boiling the frog, but they have definitely tried to just bulldoze in some of these dreaded policies like no box, no rules kind of thing. And I don't see Lord of the Rings flying off the shelves. I don't see Heresy flying off the shelves. I don't see Age of Sigmar flying off the shelves. Frankly, I think that maybe 40k has succeeded in spite of itself, and they've taken the wrong lessons away. And when they've tried to apply those to other less robust ecosystems, it has been quite devastating.
Yeah, the like I think we all despise the idea of rules policy wherein you can only sell or you can only create rules and for units which have a product to be tied with it. Nobody likes it, and I don't think when people get into tabletop gaming, they're expecting a. Well, I think I don't know if this is disagreeable. My perception is I think people want a sense of permanence for tabletop wargaming. Like they're not getting into tabletop wargaming to have the server shut down on them because it's over now, right? Like you kind of
Such a good
associate
point.
a certain level of permanence with the physical thing that you're laboring to build, right? And when that's taken away, it's very discouraging to, I think, most hobbyists. On the 40k side, I think because of the competitive upswell around 40k, there's a section that's very permissive, a section of the audience that's very permissive of, well, if there's no product, it's not tournament legal, et cetera, et cetera. So you can have an inroad to that sort of reasoning.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Yeah, no, I have little more to add. To be honest with you, like every single time I thought of something, and every time I thought of something, somebody else has said it. So yeah, I'm good. Like I've got nothing else to add. I'll just be repeating everybody else's points.
We're just four guys just in a room agreeing with each other.
Exactly, as is our wont to do.
Well, it makes me wonder, is that just because we're associating with people with a like mindset, or is it because it's genuinely the problems? Like, are we in the Matrix? Yeah. It's
well, either way, thing is, either way, if there's four guys here all agreeing, talking to each other, then that's an audience. And Games Workshop, you like money, right? So give me some classic Warhammer, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd buy the shit out of that.
At least give me a full color version of the 3.5 Chaos Codex, just for me. Just saying, it'd be nice. It'll go with. It'll go nicely with my Liber Chaotica companion. I've got the full big thick Liber Chaotica book. It'll go nicely with that.
I mean, war gear options with points? You're crazy.
I know. Being able to equip items and make my own custom demon prints.
Like battlefield rules and Force org charts? Get out of
here. Yeah, I know. It's kind of weird. And like restrictions on what I can and can't take. Yeah. What a strange time to be alive. So, any final thoughts? It is worth
my final thought. I think you can always go back to older editions, but it's harder to convince other people to go back to older editions, which is why no one said you couldn't play Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, but nobody did after it died. They all waited, and they either went to 9th Age or they basically, when Warhammer Old World came out, they came back. And I think there's an element of you can go back and play older editions, but if Games Workshop did bring out a classic edition, it brings a sense of legitimacy that we can all rally around. Right now, there's people that want to play second, people want to play third, people want to play fourth. And I think if they brought out Classic Edition, which is like Old World, is the best of everything essentially brought back together with lessons learned and hindsight, I think it would add a great sense of legitimacy. And I think there would be a surprisingly large market for it.
Well, going back and playing older things, it makes me think of computer games. It's like, yes, you can go back and play, Battlefield Vietnam from like 2006 or 7 or something like that. But it's gonna be so hard to make it happen and find a group to play it with and organize servers. It's the same kind of thing, right? Going back and playing older editions of 40k, it's very hard. So yeah, that would degree of legitimacy. Like, I'm not saying that I would buy a Warhammer Classic because I think I'm almost at the point where they've done enough damage that I'm like, look, I love your world, but I'm done with you as a company. I think I'm almost at that point. Yeah, so Classic Edition wouldn't do it for me, but I think for a lot of people, it would be pretty spicy.
Take my money.
Whore.
Well, you know, I never professed to be anything different.
I am a whale. Milk me. Take my money, Games Workshop.
Caress my orders for your monetary.
I'll be one of those cows that walks into the farm to get milked. I'll be like, just walking in. Give me everything.
Strap it on, son.
Yeah.
Like,
Bring back the old box art. Bring back the old box art. And you know what? I don't want you to. I want them to I want them to bring back the old Space Marine kits. People think that we need new models for Old World. No, I want older models. I want you to bring. I would buy so many Tactical Marines on 25mm bases. It would be unreal. Like Games Workshop, you would be able to sell me so much old rope. It would be unreal.
They need to do like
That's the thing.
They need to do like the Space Marine Heroes that they did. The Firstborn, like the Space Marine Heroes collection. You know, like that, where the poses, the old school sculpt, but in a much better set of posing. They didn't have like the wide leg stance. Oh, crisp. That was a good look.
Yeah, that was an awesome set of miniatures.
Kaifa, final thoughts?
Batch of nothing. It was fun today, this morning. Great way to start the day. Incentives, yeah, I agree with basically everything we all said. I don't know if it's possible for Games Workshop to create an older edition in that way, as much as I would probably enjoy playing it and probably would play it if they were to do so. It's just hard for me to believe they would, when it seems to me like they don't like to even acknowledge that older editions were a thing. They don't even call their new editions a thing. They just say it's the new one. So yeah, I guess that's my closing thought.
Well,
yeah, I think I'm the same. I think I'm the same. I think we've covered pretty much every single thing, and I don't think I've disagreed with anything, to be honest with you. The only thing I disagree on is that I'd buy that. I'd give Games Workshop money for that old Warhammer because I just want to support it. But I also see the cynical side of, you've already got that. It's over here, and you don't need to give them any more money. Yeah, I get that as well. So.
Yeah. Well, one last thing before we go. For the audience, those that are asking for an update on Circle Edition, I will do a proper one at some point, but you can roughly see what's going on screen right now for those who are watching. Advanced rules, Astartes weapons, core rules, Imperial Army weapons, Legion of Astartes army list, Mechanicum weapons, Solrock's army list. I'm getting there. It's just a lot to write in the time I have available. So I am getting through it. My sincere thanks to all the guests today, both the regular crew at Grimdark Therapy, but also especially Mordian for coming over and joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. Awesome.
It is very appreciated that you popped on over, and I think it was a pretty good talk all around. So I feel good. You all feel good?
Feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, thanks everyone for watching. Leave your thoughts below on the incentives, and catch you all on the next episode. Bye.
All right, dude. See you later.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.